You are holding a piece of stone that came from 300 kilometers away. You have never been to the place it came from. You will never go there. You don't know the name of the person who dug it out of the earth, or the names of the dozen hands it passed through before it reached yours. But here it is, in your palm, black and glassy and sharp enough to open skin. And the fact that you are holding it at all means something extraordinary just happened. Something that no other animal on Earth has ever done. You just participated in trade. And trade, it turns out, is one of the strangest and most powerful things your species ever invented. Let's go back and watch it begin. For most of human history, if you wanted something, you made it yourself, or you took it from the ground near where you stood. Your tools came from local stone. Your food came from the land you could walk across in a day. Your whole material world fit inside the radius of your own 2 feet. This is how nearly every animal lives, and for a very long time, it was how your ancestors lived too. And then, something changed. Objects started to move. Archaeologists have a way of tracking this, and it's beautifully precise. Stone has a chemical fingerprint. Obsidian in particular, the black volcanic glass that ancient humans prize for its razor edge, forms only in specific volcanic locations, and each volcano produces obsidian with a slightly different chemical signature. So when researchers find a piece of obsidian at an ancient site, they can test it and say, with real confidence, exactly which volcano it came from. It's like a return address stamped into the rock. And what they found changed the picture of the human past. At sites across East Africa, archaeologists, including Marian and colleagues, studying the Middle Stone Age, found obsidian tools sitting hundreds of kilometers from the nearest volcano that could have produced them. Not a few kilometers, hundreds. Some of the most striking evidence comes from work led by researchers analyzing obsidian at sites in the East African Rift, where tools were found up to 300 kilometers from their geological source, and this was happening as far back as 300,000 years ago. Sit with that number, 300,000 years. This is around the time our species, Homo sapiens, was first taking shape, and already, before agriculture, before cities, before writing, before the wheel, black glass was traveling across landscapes far larger than any single person could cover. So how did it move? Here is where it gets interesting, because there are 2 possibilities, and telling them apart tells you something deep about human nature. The first possibility is that people simply carried it themselves. A band walks a long distance, picks up obsidian along the way, and carries it home. This happened, but it can't explain everything, because some of these objects travel distances no foraging band would realistically cover in its seasonal rounds. The second possibility is the one that matters. The obsidian moved through exchange. It passed from one group to another and then to another, each handoff carrying it a little further from its origin, like a bucket of water passed down a line. No single person made the whole journey. The object did. And for that to happen, groups of humans who were not related, who may have spoken differently, who had every evolutionary reason to see each other as competition, had to meet, and instead of fighting, hand each other something of value. That is the thing no other animal does. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, do not trade between groups. When 2 chimp communities meet at a border, the result is not a marketplace. It is often violence. The idea of walking up to a stranger from another band and calmly exchanging goods is, in the animal kingdom, almost uniquely human. The anthropologists and archaeologists have long noted that this kind of long-distance exchange required something new in the human mind, the ability to trust someone you are not related to, and to imagine a relationship that extends beyond people you can see. So picture the actual moment. Let's reconstruct it. You live in a small band, 30 people, somewhere in the grasslands of ancient Africa. One day, your group encounters another band near a shared water source. Your heart rate climbs. Strangers are dangerous, but someone in the other group holds up a piece of that beautiful black glass, sharper than anything you own. And someone in your group holds up something the strangers don't have. Maybe ochre, the red pigment used for decoration and ritual. Maybe shell beads carried from a distant coast. Maybe dried food, or a particular kind of hide. And then the exchange happens. A pause, a gesture, An object placed on the ground and another placed beside it. No words needed, or maybe a few. And when it's done, both groups walk away with something they could not have made themselves, and something else too, something invisible, a precedent, a memory that says, those people over there are worth meeting again. This is the birth of the trade route, not a road, a relationship, repeated. And the goods that moved along these earliest routes tell you exactly what ancient humans valued. It wasn't just practical. Yes, obsidian and good toolstone moved, because a sharper blade was a real advantage. But some of the very oldest traded objects were not tools at all. At sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa and across the ancient world, archaeologists find shell beads, tiny perforated shells strung together that traveled far from any coastline. Ochre, the red earth pigment, moved across vast distances too, and it had no practical survival use whatsoever. You cannot eat it. It will not cut anything. Its entire value was symbolic. It was used to decorate bodies, mark objects, and signal meaning. Think about what that means. Some of the first things humans ever traded across long distances were not things you needed to survive. They were things you needed to be a person, to signal who you were, to belong. Here is the counterintuitive twist, and it's a big one. We tend to think of trade as a purely economic invention, something cold and transactional, invented by merchants for profit. But that gets the history exactly backwards. The earliest trade was not primarily about getting stuff. It was about creating and maintaining relationships between groups who would otherwise have no reason to trust each other. Anthropologists studying live-in hunter-gatherer societies, including the extensive work of Polly Wiesner among the Jew Huanzi people of the Kalahari, documented exactly this. Wiesner described a gift exchange system called Hxaro, in which people deliberately gave objects to distant partners, not to make a profit, but to build a web of obligation and friendship that could be called upon in times of drought or hardship. The gift was never really about the object. It was about the connection the object created. The object was an excuse to stay bound to people who lived far away. And those bonds were survival insurance. When your local water source dried up, you didn't just have your own band. You had a network. You had partners 300 kilometers away who owed you and whom you could turn to. So that piece of black glass in your palm was never just a tool. It was a physical trace of a relationship. Every traded object was a thread, and the threads together formed a web, and that web is what let small, fragile bands of humans survive shocks that would have wiped out any single isolated group. And you are still living inside that web. Think about the last simple thing you use today. The coffee in your cup grew on a hillside you will never visit. The phone in your pocket contains metals pulled from the earth on multiple continents, assembled by thousands of hands you will never shake. You trust, without a second thought, an invisible chain of strangers stretching around the entire planet, and you don't even notice, because trusting distant strangers has become as natural to you as breathing. But it wasn't always natural. Somewhere in the deep past, one of your ancestors stood in front of a stranger, heart pounding, and made a choice not to fight, but to exchange. And that choice, repeated across 300,000 years, built everything. Every market, every road, every supply chain, every economy. All of it grew from that first nervous moment when two humans who had every reason to distrust each other decided instead to trade. You are holding a piece of stone that came from 300 kilometers away. And the reason you can hold it at all is that long before history began, your species learned the one trick that would carry it across the whole earth: how to turn a stranger into a partner.